Hello everybody, Mike Tanik here, and thank you for joining me for more Paradise Lost. We are at the very end stage of this, I believe. We're in the final stage of grief, anyhow, which is acceptance. And we are also on level 5, sub-level 5 of the bunker, which I believe, according to some stuff we read lying around, was the very last level. And ho 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 ho. That is like a really awful Christmas tree. Like if you wanted to have a bad Christmas tree to terrify your kids, that's the one. You'd come here and cut that down and drag it to your living room. Man, again, as always, this place is beautiful. Great art design. So this, this has to be the very base, unless there's another level below that goes with where you find the roots. But what do we got? It's time. It was fate that brought us to this place, and it is fate that now leads us away. We leave tomorrow in search of another place that we can call home. We mistook this place for paradise. We know now that it was never meant to be our paradise, but it could be yours. I know you will come here. If not in a year, then perhaps in 5. If not in 5, then in 10. But you will come here. You cannot avoid it. It may seem cruel, but the gods have a plan for us all. You can try to run from your destiny, but it will catch up with you in the end. You will come here, and you will have a chance to make everything right. You know what needs to be done, Szymon. Lucian. That's addressed to me. How did he know that I would be here? I mean, based on some of the stuff that we read, he did make a son. He made me, if for no other reason than to have a counterpart to Ava, the host, to kind of prolong the bio component, as he referred to her brain, to be able to run this place the way it was meant to be run. Because it's only ever had the single host, and like all of the terminal interactions that we had, it only ever says host 1. And I believe Lucian tried, he might have tried to hook himself into it, I don't know. Or no, he didn't try to hook himself into it, because he figured out that that wouldn't work, for whatever reason. He was too old. But it was. Hang on, where am I going? And why are my clothes glowing? It's probably not good to have big mega cables just kind of sitting in the water like that, but what do I know? That thing's terrifying.
Szymon.
Do you want me to read something to you?
No. The light is hurting my eyes today. Open the drawer for me, would you? I got upset when you found that. I shouldn't have.
It's okay, Mom.
I hope he forgives me
Hope who forgives you?
when he sees what a smart, brave young man you turned out to be.
Mom, what are you talking about? Forgive you for what?
Forgive me for taking you away from him.
Mom, I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Mom,
Huh.
it's not your fault. You did what you had to.
I mean, I'd say she made the right choice. He only made me, again, to have something to hook into the computer. I mean, well, what's worse? This fate, wandering alone in a nuclear wasteland, or being part of this machine that runs the bunker? It's hard to say. It's not a choice I would want to have to make, personally. One more good one. Oh yeah, this is definitely the place. Let's see. My god, that's huge and horrifying. Dear God. What is all that? Crud. Oh, hello. There's someone in the tube. I bet you I know who that is. Ava. Got her wreath there. Eesh.
I bet this isn't how you imagined you'd find me. Everything came back to me when you found that grave. Like a flood. To think I was keeping the truth from myself for all that time. It's amazing what the human mind is capable of.
Eva, you're alive.
I am.
That's good.
At this point, I don't really know, Szymon. What I do know is that I was really upset when I told you to leave. Now I'm glad you didn't listen.
There are so many things I want to...
I'm tired, Szymon. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I think I'd like to go.
What do you mean?
I want you to unplug me.
Eva... Why?
Szymon, I don't even understand what I am anymore.
Well, you're my sister.
You're my sister.
I always wanted to have a sibling. I'm glad I can call you brother. Thank you for saying that. You know, I tried to forgive him for leaving me here, but I can't. Do you think that makes me a bad person? Tell me, what kind of father condemns his own daughter to oblivion?
I'm not sure what to say.
Lucian faked your death to save you. Is that really true, though?
Lucian lied about your death to save you.
And you think it was justified?
I think he loved you as a father more than anything else.
Szymon, that's really a lot to take in. I don't know what to do with it. How do you imagine my life here will look, huh? You think I'll be able to go outside, see the sunshine? What happens if there's a power outage and I'm all alone? Or if someone comes and tries to take this place and use it? You think I'll be strong enough to defend myself?
You're stronger than you think. Eva, tell me, what will happen to you if I agree?
Well, that depends on what you believe happens when someone dies. What do you think?
Okay, you meet the people who died before you. Nothing, there's nothing there. Or I don't know. Now, there's what I believe and what's I want her to think. Okay, let's just tell her that you meet the people who died before you. In case I have no choice here, I want her to be happy.
You will meet all the people who died before you.
That doesn't sound too bad, does it? I think you're ready.
Ready for what?
To make the decision. I want you to know that I'll accept your decision no matter what it is.
Okay, so I'll unplug her or won't. So now, unplugging her will make me all alone in the entire world down here. Now, I'm sure there are still other humans alive somewhere. I don't think it was a worldwide nuclear apocalypse, but it was at least in Europe. But again, basically, I'm condemned to wander by myself. And with her, the main reason she wants to get unplugged is to, you know, not have to deal with some of the yucky memories that she had with Lucian and how she came to be in this predicament. But, you know, like, everybody here has bad memories that we can't just unplug from. It's not that easy. In her case, it could be, but, you know, we're dwelling on that when, you know, that's very selfish of her, because what about Szymon or Szymon? He is going to be then stuck with all these icky memories he can't just unplug from. So, and that's not to say that things can't improve. Things can definitely improve if we're together, right? Why wouldn't both of us want that? So, no, I will not unplug you.
I can't do that to you.
I guess it's too much to ask of you, but I want you to know that I respect your decision. It's a relief to know my fate is settled, but that leaves us with you. What are you going to do?
I'm thinking about staying here. I'm thinking about leaving this place. Well, if I planned on leaving, I would have unplugged her. I would have done that. I'm not just going to say, I know you want to unplug and not have to live in misery anymore. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to leave. See ya. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah, and likewise, I wouldn't unplug her, then stay here myself. So I'm thinking about
I
staying here.
want to stay here. What do you think?
And you know what they say? Two's company, three's a crowd. I'm glad I won't be here all by myself. We might try to do some good around here together. So, what's your final decision, Szymon?
I'm staying. I'm definitely staying. Yeah.
I will stay here.
Good. I never liked saying goodbye.
Oh, right. So that means I am going to plug in. So we'll both be in the machine together. Which in any other situation, I'd be like, this is sick. No way, I'm leaving. But in nuclear apocalypse, why not? Do it this way if you have to continue to exist. Until someone comes along and takes advantage of us. But, Okay, wow. What a game. So here's what we're going to do. First thing I'm going to do is kind of explain the plot of it and up to the ending as I understood it as it was presented to me. Now, this isn't definitive, doesn't mean it's exactly what happened or what was intended, but this is my take on it. And afterward, I'm going to give it a quick review, what I liked, what I didn't like, and we'll end it there. But I won't go all the way back to the beginning of World War II, but essentially what happened is World War II dragged on. The Allies didn't invade, or at least the U.S. didn't get involved until way later in the war. By that point, the Nazis had developed nuclear weapons and the V-3 rocket with which to carry them. And in anticipation of what they were going to do, they dug bunkers like this one. I think this one was called Gesellschaft. That was the name of this particular bunker. And they nuked everything and everyone. Right before they did that, though, the Polish resistance attacked this bunker. And I'll get into that part of the story in a moment. Let's talk about the Nazis living here and how it was presented. It was fairly gut-wrenching for a game, and the horror in this game was subtle and more visceral than any that I've played recently, any horror games. it really went into a very believable look at what the Nazis were up to in a very blunt and kind of hit you over the head with it. Um, for example, as we descended, like towards the earlier levels, um, we saw memos. There was memos laid everywhere, which kind of outlined what the Nazis were up to. But one of them very clearly detailed kind of the order of people and how they classify human beings. The top, being Aryans. They're, the perfect people. They get the best of everything, all the way down to the T4 program, which was actually a real thing. It's the T4 program was an extermination program, and in that they threw criminals, substance abusers, anyone with mental defects, anyone who you could think of who wouldn't fit into that picture perfect Nazi, subject. So you can think that that's a very small target to hit. So everyone else was out here, and they very matter of factly talked about terminating a lot of people. Going further into that, we saw the Nazis' eugenics program, which was called the Lebensborn program, which you saw towards, I think, the last episode. And that was also a very real thing, in which the purpose of it was to breed perfect Aryans, what Hitler's idea of a perfect Aryan is. And on the real side of it, in reality, that started as a social welfare program for wives and officers of the SS who had already proven their racial purity and racial worth, to Nazism. And that evolved into kind of a social welfare program for unwed mothers. And provided that those unwed mothers could prove their racial purity, as well as that of the father of the child to be. And they would go on and either see about getting that child into foster care, into a good Aryan home. A lot of really sick stuff that they thought that on the surface, if you hear about it, a program that takes in unwed mothers and gives them the best of everything, best medical care and best child care. But in reality, what they were doing was breeding out undesirables. So we saw a taste of that here. And that's where our character comes in. Szymon, I still can't pronounce the name, is a product of the Lebensborn program. We saw drawings that his mother did down in that cell, because that's really what it was a cell. So let's talk about the Polish resistance. They attacked right before the bombs hit. I don't know if they knew it was happening or what, but they attacked, and they were on the cusp of losing the battle against the Germans, and they had a decision to make. And that's where the other two main characters come in. Lucian, who is my father, and Dominika, who were both kind of captains in their own rights of the Polish resistance. Lucian was a scientist who wanted to make use of the technology the Germans had developed, because it would help them win. In fact, it did help them win. Dominika, on the other hand, was very anti-Nazi tech, very anti anything to do with the Nazis. And they both had an idea of what it took to run the technology that operates in this place, and that was humans. What we encountered in this place was not true artificial intelligence. It was a human being plugged into the system who gets used up like a battery. So in the end, they ended up using the Nazi technology, and the technology swept the Germans away in a very apparently revolting fashion. We don't really get to see how that worked, but it did. It got rid of the Nazis. After which, the Polish resistance moved in. Lucian and Dominika, for a while, while they differed on opinion, they obviously worked together. We saw in the lab, about 2 levels up, where Lucian was working on figuring out a way to power this place in a better way. And we had a recording between Dominika and Lucian, and they seemed to be on good terms. Now, at some point, their differences of opinion became so great that they had to split into two different camps. These camps worked together. One side handled like the agricultural food production. The other, side handled processing and running the place, keeping the place running. Lucian was in the camp of keeping the place running, and he was plugging people into the technology here to make it work, to help them survive. Among them was his daughter, who happens to be Eva, or Ewa, however you want to pronounce it, who is the girl that we talked to the entire time, and it turns out she is actually our sister. Lucian is both of our fathers. In the end, Szymon gets to the very bottom, figures out that Eva has been plugged into the machine for a very long time, much longer than any of the other poor saps who got plugged into this. The average time that someone would survive being plugged into the system was 4 months, after which they were refuse. They were essentially treated as refuse by Lucia. So because of this and a couple other reasons, the friction between the two camps eventually boils over to where Dominica's camp attacks Lucian's camp, and in the end, Lucian's camp came out on top. And one of the best parts of this that I feel like was really understated was Lucian's drifting from a man of science to a man of religion. And in this case, worship, he basically became a prophet for the god Veles. And really, you can tell, it's like watching what would really happen with people put under this kind of pressure living in these environments. What would happen to them. So essentially, one of the reasons that precipitated the war between the two camps was Lucian's eventual obsession with the god Veles and sacrificing a large amount of food, of their rationed food, to the god, basically wasting it so that nobody could eat it. And not just any food, sometimes the best that they had. Now, Lucian's drift into this pagan god, it's very odd. At first, you can tell his decaying mental state is primarily due to the nature of his work. As I mentioned before, plugging people into this machine. You're killing them. And in the end, he figured out that the best people to plug into the machine were children. So he is basically running an extermination camp of his own to keep everyone else alive. He's sacrificing children to keep the rest of the resistance alive. And that's where the idea of sacrifice comes in. You can see it creeping into his brain. Essentially what he's doing is human sacrifice to a god. And it's a machine god, but the end result is the same. So his drift into paganism is kind of brought on. The straw that broke the camel's back was that he started to see signs, and these signs are things that to us are easily explained. The first being they found a white goat after thinking that all the goats in the place were exterminated, or that they had been hunted to extinction. Not exterminated, but they found a goat, brought it back, and that was the moment where they said, hey, there is someone else looking out for us. Again, easily explainable with the size of this place. Even if you have a whole resistance living down here, it'd be easy to miss a goat. The second thing was that there was a man who was sick. They had no idea. They stated they had no idea what kind of sick he was, what his disease was, but he was cured, and he was cured rapidly. He got better. Obviously, very easily explainable, especially if it was just like a really bad case of syphilis or gonorrhea. Well, maybe not syphilis, that doesn't get better on its own, but, or a really bad flu. All of a sudden, your body kicks it out. That happens. Easily explained. And the final odd one that they mentioned was that a woman who worked the fields had a broken hoe. She found a new hoe in a big bunker that was designed to do large-scale agriculture where they stockpiled equipment like that. So you could see it didn't take much to push them over the edge into this. If that's what did it, you could tell where they were at, the desperation. And so they started sacrificing things to the god Veles instead. And that seems to be when Dominica said enough and they attacked. So that's when our character, I'm going to call him Szymon just for, because it's easier for me and it's clearer. That's kind of where Szymon comes in on the heels of this big conflict. Again, our mother was enrolled in the Lebensborn program. Now, this is where the timeline gets kind of funny because Lucian is supposed to be my father. However, my mother was in the program for unwed mothers in upstairs that was run by the Nazis. So she was there when the Nazis were. So he would have had to impregnated her on the outside, her go into the Lebensborn program. They attack, and the Polish resistance attacks with Lucian, and my mother escapes, essentially to get me away from him. That's the reason that she stated. So he kind of comes back into this. There's this kind of weird time bubble that it could work, but it really doesn't seem right. Now, again, I don't know if that's intentional or not. So obviously my mother passes away from disease, and our character Szymon, who's going through the stages of grief, each level is named after one of these stages of grief. And that's supposed to be, each stage is supposed to be reflected in each level, and a lot of times it's really abstract and hard to see. I'm not going to go through each one individually because that's a whole video on its own. But as we go through it, the moods of, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance, I believe that's them, are sort of reflected in the levels and your interactions with Eva. At the end of the day, your decisions along the way matter very little to the end game. Now, it apparently will provide you different dialogue options, maybe different areas to visit, but your goal at the end is to find Eva and find out who Lucian is, who you do find out, and that doesn't deter you from trying to find Eva. Our character Szymon is so desperate to not be alone in this world, this 12-year-old kid, that he is willing to look past his suspicions that Eva maybe isn't real or isn't what she says that she is, and proceed to do whatever he can to get close to her, frequently risking his life for this stranger who's talking to him on a microphone. Now, it says a lot. There's a lot of interweaving ideas about humanity and how this game reflects it, but at the end of the day, he just wants to not be alone. Now, you saw one ending that I did, at the very end of the game. There's 3 others that you could choose. I'm probably going to go back and do them. I might make a video about it, might not, but what I chose was what I thought was best for both of the characters. Eva does not want to be alone. She apparently survives when the power is off. Somehow she still stays alive. Szymon, where else is he going to go? He's got nothing at all. And there are several points early on in the game, even with the dialogue choices that you make, where you could tell he's suspicious of her. He could tell that something's up, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So we both ended up plugged into the machine. We will run this place together. And, if it was any other setting, if it wasn't post-apocalypse, I would say, hell no, get me out of this bunker and throw a grenade behind me on my way out. So I did what I thought was best for them. So that's where the plot ends. That's my understanding of it. And again, it's not complete. There are some smaller parts that I could go through, but that's the larger story of it and the parts that I found most interesting. So now let's get into the review. Now, I did kind of a running review as we went through this, commenting on things I like. Let's do, first and foremost, graphics and art style. A plus, in my opinion. For not a triple A title, it has in places triple A art design. Um, this uses the Unity engine, so obviously there are some reused assets here and there, but they're all used in a way that makes this place seem real and visceral and lived in and beaten to hell. A place that's barely hanging on, barely functioning. Um, it's reflected well, it's claustrophobic at times, some of the level designs, because it's clearly guiding you along your path, which I appreciate. It's better than spending an hour wandering an area just to get to the next story point. But even in those claustrophobic parts where your story drops off, where the game story drops off, um, it kind of picks up with your surroundings. You can look around anywhere and see a history of what happened there, what that room was used for, who used it, things like that. So it's just very rich. And the horror in this place is just, it's a slow burn, but the horror feels a lot more icky than most other horror games that I've ever played, because it's really, it comes off in a really sincere fashion. For example, um, the Lebensborn program, that was really tough to watch. Looking at not just the cells, the sterile cells that these pregnant mothers were kept in, essentially as breeding rabbits, but the abandoned playground where these kids had no future were kept, and the manner in which it was discussed. Such as, if the mothers are really, really good and follow all the rules, then perhaps maybe their treat is to get to see their own kid. And the fact that that's based on, real deal program that the Nazis had just makes you feel walking away not feeling very good about people in general, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's the graphic design is great. The story, it took me by surprise. I was expecting your standard, post-apocalypse dungeon crawler type thing, and that is not what this was at all. There were so many opportunities for the devs to put in jump scares. There were so many sections in the levels where you could have turned a corner, and obviously there's not monsters or zombies or anything in this game, but they could have made something crash or boom or, Eva yell at you, and you probably would have jumped out of your skin. And the fact that they didn't do that really speaks volumes to me, because there's no shtick to the game. There's not any of your standard tropes for a lot of these games. They did a great job of taking historical fact and weaving that into the story, for great effect, especially when it comes to human experimentation, when it comes to classifying human beings, when it comes to, religion versus faith. Religion versus science, and how it presented in a way where you're like, wow, perhaps there's a lot more similarities there than we thought, if put in the right light. So my complaints about the game, like everyone else, were the ability to move faster. Your character's stuck basically on one speed. There is a run button, but it's a walk. You're still walking. And I get why they did that. I understand that, they want you to soak up the environment and not miss anything. But at the end of the day, I want that to be up to me. I want to decide, what areas I really want to take in. Taking that out of the player's hands, I just don't like that. Graphically, while the graphics were great, performance-wise, this game absolutely tanked my machine. The reason why a lot of the episodes got chopped up is because there was a crash due to lack of memory, and my machine, it's not my machine. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of it, but I'll tell you, it's using a lot more resources than a lot of more high-performance games. So that's is a real issue because I had to reduce graphic settings at parts that I shouldn't have had to. Beyond that, I don't really have a lot of complaints. I overall, I give this game an 8 out of 10. Uh, Plot points were spot on, and this is one of those games that I think is really, really underrated. So, and there is replayability too. That's what I like about it. I am actually probably going to, on my own time, that's very little time that I have to myself, go through and try to do some of the other choices along the way because I want to see what else there is to this story. So there is that motivation to do it. So that really helps. And I'll thank you to all of you who have followed me through this series. I hope that my take on it did provide you some perspective and maybe you go and try it for yourself. Let me know what you guys think. Were there any plot points that I missed? Did I interpret something wrong? I'm sure I missed some major key plot points and twists and turns, but I want to know about it. So please do comments. Let me know what you think. In any case, let's call this game finished. Mike Tanik out.